I left my country for one reason: my son. For 12 years I lived in the shadows in the United States, working every day, sending money home, believing I was building a better life for him. I missed everything: his wedding, the birth of my grandson, moments a mother can never get back, but I told myself it would be worth it. Until one day, everything ended. I was deported. And when I finally went back home, to the son I sacrificed everything for, he looked at me like I didn't belong there. He let me stay one night, and the next morning, he asked me to leave. I stood outside with nowhere to go, asking myself one question: how did my own son become a stranger to me? This is my story. My name is Meera Sharma, and I am 51 years old. I was born in a small town in India where everyone knows each other's stories, and where a woman's worth is often measured by how much she sacrifices for her family. For most of my life, I believed that if I gave everything I had to my son, he would one day be my shelter, my pride, and my peace. 12 years ago, I made the hardest decision of my life. I left India and went to the United States, not because I wanted a new life, but because I wanted a better future for my only son, Arjun. At that time, he was young, unmarried, and full of dreams. I still remember the day I left him standing at the doorway of our modest home. He tried to act strong, but I could see the fear in his eyes. I told him, "This is for you. Everything I do there will be for you." But what I never told him was how afraid I was. I did not go to the United States legally. I knew the risks, but I also knew the reality of our situation. We had debts. We had no steady income. And in our society, a mother does not sit and watch her child struggle if she can do something about it. So I went, carrying nothing but hope and fear in my heart. Life there was not what people imagine. There were no bright lights for me, no comfort. I worked quietly, cleaning houses, sometimes working from early morning until late at night. I lived in small shared spaces, always careful, always afraid. Every knock on the door made my heart race. Every siren outside felt like it was coming for me. But every month, without fail, I sent money home. At first, Arjun would call me often. He would tell me about his plans, about fixing the house, about starting something of his own. I felt proud. Even from so far away, I believed I was building something meaningful for him. Years passed. He got married. I was not there to see it. He had a son, my grandson. I have never held him in my arms. Still, I kept sending money. Even when I was tired, even when my body ached so much that I could barely stand, I reminded myself, this is for Arjun. This is for his future. This is what a mother does. Sometimes, I would imagine the day I would return. I thought he would be waiting for me at the airport. I imagined him smiling, touching my feet, saying, "Ma, you have done enough. Now you rest." That dream kept me alive during my darkest days. But life does not always return what you give. One night, everything changed. There was a raid. I remember the fear in the room, the shouting, the confusion, people running, crying. I froze. For 12 years, I had lived carefully, quietly, invisibly. But in that moment, none of it mattered. I was caught. The days that followed felt like a blur. Questions, papers, waiting, and then the final decision. I was going back to India, just like that. 12 years of my life reduced to a single conclusion: deported. I did not even have time to process it. On the flight back, I sat alone, staring out the window. I was not just returning to my country. I was returning to a life I had left behind, a life that no longer existed. I had changed. My son had changed. Everything had changed. But I still believed in one thing: my son. I told myself, whatever happens, Arjun is there. He is my home. I arrived in India with some savings. Not a fortune, but enough to survive for some time. I had no house anymore. It was in Arjun's name now. I had given it to him years ago, thinking it was the right thing to do. After all, what does a mother need if her son is settled? When I reached his house, I stood outside for a moment, holding my small bag. My heart was beating fast, but I smiled. This was the moment I had dreamed of for 12 long years. I knocked on the door. It was my daughter-in-law who opened it. She looked at me with surprise, not warmth. For a second, she did not say anything. Then she called out, "Arjun, your mother is here." Your mother, not Ma, not Amma, just Your mother. Arjun came to the door. He looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw something in his eyes. Not joy, not relief, something else, something I could not understand. I stepped forward, my eyes filling with tears. Arjun, but he did not move. That was the first moment my heart felt something was wrong. Still, I told myself I was overthinking. 12 years is a long time. People change, situations change. Maybe he was just surprised. He let me come inside. That night, I stayed in his house. But something in the air felt heavy, unfamiliar. It did not feel like home. And deep inside, a quiet fear began to grow. I just didn't know yet how right that fear would be. That first night in my son's house felt longer than all the 12 years I had spent in the United States. I sat quietly in a corner of the living room, holding my small bag close to me as if it was the only thing that still belonged to me. The house had changed. The walls were freshly painted, the furniture was new, and there were framed photos everywhere, but none of them had me in them. There were pictures of Arjun, his wife, and their little boy, my grandson. I walked closer to one of the photos. He looked about 5 or 6 years old, smiling brightly, wearing a school uniform. My chest tightened. This was my blood, my own grandson, and I was seeing him for the first time through a frame on the wall. His name is Rohan, my daughter-in-law said from behind me, her tone flat. I turned, forcing a small smile. He is very handsome. She nodded slightly, but there was no warmth in her expression, no attempt to make me feel welcome, just politeness, the kind you show to a stranger. And that is exactly how I was being treated, a stranger. When Rohan came into the room, he looked at me with curiosity. He hid slightly behind his mother's leg, staring at me as if I didn't belong there. I slowly bent down and smiled at him. "I am your daddy," I said softly. He didn't respond. He just looked at his mother, confused. Something inside me broke in that moment, but I held myself together. I told myself, "It's okay, Mira. He doesn't know you yet. You will have time." But I didn't know then. I wouldn't have that time. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. In our culture, when someone returns home after so many years, especially a mother, there should be warmth, questions, emotions, even tears. But there was none of that, just the sound of plates, spoons, and silence. I tried to speak. "How have you been, Arjun? Work is good?" He nodded without looking at me. "Yes, everything is fine. Everything is fine." Those 3 words felt like a wall between us. I looked at my daughter-in-law. "And you? How is your health?" "I'm fine," she replied shortly. That was all. No one asked me anything. Not about my journey, not about my life there, not about how I survived for 12 years alone in a foreign country. It was as if my story did not matter. After dinner, Arjun finally spoke again. His voice was calm but distant. "Ma, how long are you planning to stay?" The question caught me off guard. I blinked, confused. I just came today, beta. I thought I would stay for some time, until I find a place." He exchanged a quick glance with his wife. It was a small moment, but I noticed it. "We don't really have much space," he said. "You can stay tonight. Tomorrow, maybe you should look for another arrangement." For a second, I thought I had heard him wrong. "Another arrangement?" I repeated softly. "Yes," he said, now looking directly at me. "Things are different now. I have my own family, responsibilities. It's not easy. Not easy." I felt the words echo inside me. For 12 years, nothing in my life had been easy. But I had never once told myself that helping my son was not easy. I had just done it. I tried to remain calm. "Arjun, I'm not asking to stay forever. Just for a few days. I just came back. I don't even have a place yet." His wife spoke this time. "It's not about a few days. It's about adjustment. We are not used to this. That word cut deeper than anything else. I was no longer his mother. I was this. I looked at Arjun, hoping, just hoping, that he would say something different, that he would defend me, that he would remember who I was. But he didn't. He stayed silent. And in that silence, I understood something I had never imagined I would have to understand. I was not welcome. Still, he allowed me to sleep there that night, if I can even call it sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in my mind, every sacrifice, every rupee I had sent, every tear I had hidden from him so he would not worry. Where had I gone wrong? Was it a mistake to leave? Was it a mistake to trust that love would remain the same after years of distance? Or was I simply forgotten? The next morning came too quickly. I could hear movements in the house, the sound of utensils, the child getting ready, normal life continuing, as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had changed. I folded my clothes slowly, carefully placing them back into my small bag. I didn't have much. After 12 years, this was all I carried back with me, a life reduced to a bag. When I stepped out, Arjun was already dressed for work. He didn't look at me immediately. "I think it's better if you start looking today," he said, almost casually. "There are some rental places nearby, as if I knew the area, as if I had a place in this world." I nodded slowly. I didn't trust my voice anymore. Before leaving, I looked once more at my grandson. He was eating breakfast, laughing at something on his mother's phone. So close, yet so far from me. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to feel that at least something of mine was still mine. But I didn't move, because by then I understood. Nothing here belonged to me anymore. Not the house, not the space, not even my own son. And as I stepped out of that house, with my bag in my hand and nowhere to go, one truth became painfully clear. The place I had called home for my entire life was no longer my home. I stepped out of my son's house with a calm face, but inside me, everything was collapsing. The door closed behind me, not with anger, not with force, but with something worse, indifference. For a few seconds, I just stood there. I looked at the street, unfamiliar and yet somehow connected to a past that no longer existed. The same neighborhood, the same air, the same sounds, but I felt like a stranger walking through someone else's life. 12 years ago, I had left this place as a mother with purpose. Now, I was standing there as a woman with nowhere to go. I tightened my grip on my bag and started walking. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stand there any longer. Not in front of that house, not in front of a door that had quietly shut me out. As I walked, memories followed me like shadows. I remembered the first time I sent money to Arjun. It was a small amount, but I was so proud. I had called him that night, asking if he received it. "Yes, Ma," he had said, his voice full of excitement. "This will help a lot." That a lot became everything. Over the years, I sent more and more. Sometimes I skipped meals to save money. Sometimes I worked extra hours when my body begged me to rest. But I never complained, because every sacrifice had a meaning. Or at least, I thought it did. I reached a small park and sat down on a bench. My legs felt weak, not from walking, but from the weight of everything I was carrying inside. For the first time since I returned, I allowed myself to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. The kind of crying that comes when your heart is too tired to even break properly. People passed by, some glancing at me, some not noticing at all. To them, I was just another woman sitting alone. But inside, I was a mother who had lost something she didn't even know could be lost. After some time, I wiped my tears and tried to think clearly. I still had some money, enough to survive for a while. But money cannot replace belonging. It cannot replace the feeling of having a place where you are wanted. Then, suddenly, a thought came to my mind. My sister. I hadn't seen her in years, but we had spoken occasionally. She lived a few hours away. We were not very close, but we were still family. And at that moment, family was the only word I had left to hold on to. I took out my phone and called her. My hands were shaking slightly. She answered after a few rings. "Mira?" Her voice carried surprise. "You're in India?" "Yes," I said softly. "I came back." There was a pause. "When?" she asked. "Yesterday." Another pause. Then her voice softened. "Where are you staying?" That question, it almost broke me again. I was at Arjun's place," I said carefully. "Was?" she repeated. I closed my eyes for a second. He asked me to find another place." This time the silence was longer. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. There was something in it, concern, maybe even anger. "Where are you right now?" she asked firmly. "In a park, nearby." "Don't move," she said immediately. "Send me your location. I'll arrange something. You're not staying there like this." Her words were simple, but they carried something I hadn't felt since I arrived. Care. I sent her my location, and within an hour, she had arranged for a driver to pick me up and bring me to her home. As I sat in the car, watching the city pass by, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, confusion. How had my life come to this? From crossing oceans for my son, to depending on my sister for shelter. When I reached her house, she was waiting outside. The moment she saw me, her expression changed completely. She walked quickly toward me, her eyes scanning my face, as if trying to read everything I had been through. "Mira," she said softly, and before I could say anything, she pulled me into a hug. That was the moment I broke. Not in silence this time. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. All the pain I had held inside, all the loneliness, all the disbelief, it came out at once. She held me tightly, saying nothing at first, and that silence, it was not empty like the silence in my son's house. This silence was full of understanding. She took me inside, gave me water, made me sit down, and let me breathe. After some time, she sat beside me and asked gently, "Tell me everything." And I did. I told her about the 12 years in the United States, the fear, the work, the money I sent. I told her about Arjun, about how he had changed, about how he looked at me like I didn't belong. And finally, I told her about this morning, how he asked me to leave. She listened quietly, her face growing more serious with every word. When I finished, she let out a slow breath and looked at me in a way that made me uneasy. "Mira," she said carefully, "there is something you need to know." My heart tightened. "What is it?" I asked. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "Arjun has not been speaking well about you for a long time." The words hit me like a sudden storm. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She looked directly at me. "He tells people that you left him, that you chose money over your family, that you cared more about earning in the United States than being a mother." I felt like the ground beneath me disappeared. "No," I whispered. "That's not true. I did everything for him." "I know," she said softly, "but that's not what he has been saying." My chest felt tight, as if I couldn't breathe properly. All those years, all those sacrifices, and this is the story he told the world? I sat there, frozen, trying to understand how my own son could rewrite my life like that. But deep down, something inside me was beginning to shift. For the first time, I stopped asking, "Why did he do this to me?" And I started asking a different question. Who has he become while I was gone? My sister's words stayed with me long after that conversation ended. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring into the darkness, replaying everything she had said. Arjun, my son, telling people that I had abandoned him, that I chose money over him? It didn't make sense. Or maybe I didn't want it to make sense. Because if it did, then I would have to accept something far more painful than being turned away from his house. I would have to accept that the story I had been living for 12 years was not the same story he had been telling. The next morning, my sister made tea and sat across from me. She watched me carefully, as if she knew my thoughts hadn't rested. "You didn't sleep, did you?" she asked. I shook my head slightly. "Mira," she said gently, "you need to understand something. When you left, Arjun was young. People around him talked, they judged, and slowly, he started believing his own version of the story." "My own version?" I repeated. She nodded. "To him, you left. That's what stayed. Not the reasons, not the sacrifices, just the fact that you weren't there." Her words were not cruel, but they were sharp with truth. I looked down at my hands. "I called him," I said quietly. "I sent money. I reminded him again and again why I was there." "Yes," she replied, "but you weren't physically present. And for many people, especially in our society, absence becomes its own story." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that love should be stronger than distance. But something inside me stopped, because deep down, I knew she wasn't entirely wrong. Still, there was something I couldn't accept. "Even then," I said, looking up at her, "how can he forget everything I did? How can he say I abandoned him when I gave him everything?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked something that caught me off guard. "Did you ever ask him what he felt? All those years?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. I had told him what I was doing. I had told him why I was doing it. But had I ever truly asked him how he felt? Or had I assumed that my sacrifices would speak for themselves? The realization was uncomfortable, but even that didn't justify what he had done now. Whatever he felt, I said slowly, does that give him the right to treat me like this? To turn me away? My sister shook her head. No, it doesn't. Her answer was firm. And there's more, she added. I felt my chest tighten again. More, she nodded. He's been telling people that you still have a lot of money, that you came back with enough to live comfortably. Some even think you don't need anyone. I let out a bitter, almost disbelieving breath. So now, I am not just a bad mother, I said quietly. I am also someone who doesn't need help. She looked at me with sympathy. People believe what they hear repeatedly. And Arjun, he has been saying these things for years. Years. That word echoed in my mind, while I was working day and night, holding on to the image of my son as my reason to keep going. He was slowly building a version of me that didn't exist, a version that made it easier for him to live without me, a version that made it easier for him to close the door on me. I felt a strange calm settle over me, not peace, but clarity. For the first time, I stopped seeing Arjun as the boy I had left behind. He was no longer that boy. He was a man now, a husband, a father, and somewhere along the way, he had made his own choices, choices that did not include me. What will you do now? My sister asked gently. The question stayed in the air. What would I do? For so long, my life had one direction: work for my son, build for my son, return to my son. But now that path was gone. I had no plan, no destination, just a life in front of me that I didn't recognize anymore. I don't know, I admitted honestly. And for the first time in many years, that answer was not followed by fear. It was followed by something else, a small, unfamiliar feeling: freedom. Later that day, I stepped outside onto my sister's balcony. The sun was warm, the street below full of life. People were moving, talking, living their routines. Life was going on, as if nothing had happened. And maybe that was the truth. My world had changed, but the world itself had not. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes for a moment. For 12 years, I had lived for someone else. Every decision, every sacrifice, every moment of pain had one purpose. But now, for the first time since I could remember, I had to ask myself a question I had never asked before. What about me? The thought felt strange, almost selfish, but also necessary. That evening, my sister came to me with a simple suggestion. Stay here as long as you need, she said. But don't rush into anything. Take time. Think about what you want, not what you think you should do. I nodded slowly. Her words made sense. But there was still something unfinished inside me, something I couldn't ignore. I needed to see Arjun again, not to beg, not to argue, but to understand. Because no matter how much I tried to move forward, there was one truth I could not escape. He was still my son, and I needed to hear from him. Not the version he told others, but the truth he carried inside himself, even if that truth would hurt me more than anything else. For 2 days, I tried to stay away. I told myself I needed time. I told myself I should focus on rebuilding my life, on thinking about my future, on letting go of what had already broken. But some questions don't fade with time. They grow louder, and mine kept asking the same thing. Why? Why did my son look at me like I didn't belong? Why did he speak about me in a way that erased everything I had done? Why did he not even try to understand me? On the 3rd day, I made my decision. I'm going to see Arjun, I told my sister. She looked at me for a moment, reading my face carefully. Are you sure? I nodded. I don't want to fight. I just need to hear it from him. She didn't try to stop me. Maybe she knew that some answers cannot be avoided. The journey back to his house felt different this time. The first time, I went with hope. This time, I went with truth waiting for me. When I reached the house, I stood outside the gate for a few seconds. My heart was beating fast, but not in the same way as before. There was no excitement, no expectation, just a quiet strength. I rang the bell. This time, Arjun opened the door. He looked surprised. Ma, you came back? His tone wasn't angry. It wasn't warm either. Just neutral. Yes, I said calmly. Can we talk? He hesitated for a second, then stepped aside. Come in. The house felt the same as before, but I didn't. I was no longer looking at it as a place I belonged. I was looking at it as a place I once believed I would belong. We sat in the living room. His wife was in the kitchen, but she didn't come out this time. It was just the two of us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I took a deep breath. "Arjun," I began softly. "I didn't come here to stay. I just want to understand something." He leaned back slightly, crossing his arms. "What is there to understand?" His words were defensive, but I didn't react. "I heard, from your aunt, that you've been telling people I left you, that I chose money over you." He looked away immediately. "I don't know what she told you," he said, "but people say many things." I held his gaze. "I'm not asking about people. I'm asking about you." Silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence. Then finally, he spoke. "You left, Ma," he said, his voice firmer now. "That's the truth." I felt the words land inside me. "I left for you," I replied. "That's what you say," he answered quickly. The sentence hit harder than I expected. "That's what I say?" I repeated, my voice trembling slightly. "Arjun, everything I did there was for you. Every rupee I sent—" "I didn't ask you to go," he interrupted. His voice rose for the first time. The room went still. I stared at him. For a moment, I didn't recognize the man sitting in front of me. "I didn't ask you to leave me alone for 12 years, he continued. "Do you know what people said? That my mother ran away, that she cared more about dollars than her own family." Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't look away. "And you believed them?" I asked quietly. "What was I supposed to believe?" He shot back. "You weren't here. You weren't there for my wedding, for my struggles, for anything. You sent money, yes, but money is not the same as a mother." His words were sharp, but for the first time, I heard something beneath them. Pain. Real pain. "I was trying to give you a better life," I said softly. "And I was trying to live without a mother," he replied. The sentence cut deeper than anything else. We both fell silent. The air between us was heavy with everything that had never been said. After a moment, I spoke again, more quietly this time. "Arjun, I never stopped being your mother." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "But you stopped needing me," I added. Something shifted in his eyes, but it disappeared just as quickly. "That's not true," he said, but his voice was lower now. "Then why did you ask me to leave?" I asked. This time, he didn't answer immediately. He looked down, rubbing his hands together. "When you came back," he began slowly. It felt strange, like someone from my past just walked into my present. His words were calm, but they carried distance. "My life is different now, Ma. I have my own family, my own responsibilities. Things are settled, and suddenly, you come back, and everything feels disrupted." Disrupted. That word stayed in the air. "So I am a disruption?" I asked. He didn't respond, but he didn't deny it either. I nodded slowly. "I understand," I said. And surprisingly, I meant it. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I finally saw the truth clearly. He had built a life without me, and in that life, there was no space left for me. I stood up. "I didn't come here to force my place in your life," I said calmly. "I just needed to hear the truth from you." He looked up at me, slightly unsettled. "Ma," I raised my hand gently, stopping him. "It's okay," I said. "You don't have to explain anymore." For the first time since I arrived, I wasn't speaking as someone who was begging to belong. I was speaking as someone who had accepted that she didn't. "I hope you are happy," I added quietly. Then I turned and walked toward the door. This time, I didn't wait. I didn't look back. Because some doors, once closed, don't need to be opened again. When I stepped out of Arjun's house that day, something inside me felt different, not lighter, but clearer. For 12 years, I had carried a dream, a belief that no matter how far I went, no matter how much time passed, my son would always be my home. That belief was gone now, and strangely, in its place, there was no anger, only acceptance. The walk away from his house felt longer than before, but this time I didn't feel lost. I wasn't wandering without direction. For the first time, I was walking for myself. When I returned to my sister's home, she looked at me with concern. "What happened?" I sat down slowly and looked at her. "He told me the truth," I said. She didn't ask for details. Maybe she saw everything she needed in my face. "And?" she asked gently. I took a deep breath. And I finally understood, I replied. That night, I slept. Not because everything was okay, but because I had stopped fighting reality. The next few weeks were not easy, but they were different. I began doing something I had not done in years. I started thinking about my own life. I still had some savings from the years I worked in the United States. Not a huge amount, but enough to start something small. My sister encouraged me to think about what I could do, not for survival, but for dignity. For a long time, I didn't know how to answer that, because for so many years my identity had only one meaning: Arjun's mother. Without that, who was I? One morning, as I was helping my sister in the kitchen, she said something simple. You've spent your whole life taking care of others. Why not continue, but in a way that also takes care of you? Her words stayed with me. Taking care of others. That was something I knew. That was something I was. And slowly, an idea began to form. A few months later, with the help of my sister, I rented a small space near a busy street. It wasn't fancy, just a simple place. And there, I started a small home-style food service. Cooking had always been part of me. In the United States, I had cooked for others quietly, without recognition. Now, I was doing it for myself. At first, there were only a few customers, then a few more. People began to notice the taste, the care, the warmth in the food. Word spread slowly but steadily. For the first time in many years, I was building something that belonged to me, not for my son, not for anyone else, for me. Sometimes I still thought about Arjun, about Rohan, about the life I was once part of. The pain didn't disappear completely, but it changed. It became something softer, something I could carry without breaking. One evening, as I was closing my small shop, I noticed a woman standing nearby. She looked tired, holding a small bag, her eyes uncertain, like she didn't know where to go. For a moment, I saw myself in her. 12 years in a foreign land, one closed door, nowhere to belong. I walked up to her gently. Are you looking for something? I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. No, I just needed a place to sit for a while. I nodded and pointed inside. You can sit here, I said. No problem. She looked surprised. Really? Yes, I replied softly. Sometimes, that's all someone needs. As she sat down, I realized something important. I may have lost the home I once believed in, but I had the power to create something new, not just for myself, but for others who felt the same emptiness I once felt. That night, as I walked back to my sister's house, I looked up at the sky. For the first time in many years, I didn't feel like I was searching for a place to belong. I felt like I was becoming that place. My name is Meera Sharma. I am 51 years old. I was deported from the United States. My own son did not give me a home, but I found something else. I found myself, and this time, I am not leaving.